Why is it that some of us turn into emotional robots? Why is it so hard to deal with emotions? Why do they always kind of shut us down? Not everybody, us. Well, it used to be me. There was a time in my life, probably 8+ years ago, where I would walk around acting as if I was an emotional robot. You have these emotions, but you stay disconnected from them. It feels uncomfortable when they're intense. You've kind of labeled them as bad or the enemy or something that's gonna take away your discipline or your control or your safety. And you're not doing it on purpose. I didn't do it on purpose. You're just doing it because you felt like that's the best way to function. And you might still be doing it. If this video triggers you, then I invite you to watch even more of it, because I want to help people that were like me with that, you know? You're struggling with emotions like I was for a lot of different reasons. And let me tell you when I realized this. I realized this after I got out of the military. I thought after 6 years in the military, 6+ years, because they forced me to stay another 5 months against my will. They call it stop-lossing. I thought that I wanted to get out more than anything, to just take my family and move on to the next step, find a way to make more money, and just have more freedom, those different things. But when I signed on the dotted line and I walked away from it, and I was moving into the next step of my life with my family in tow, something hit me, and it was intense. It was like a feeling of loneliness, this feeling of just falling by the wayside with nothing really to catch me. And as that kept on going, I was still focused on my goal to get a higher paying job, to support my family better, because we were always 1 inch away from being on the street. I'm gonna talk about that stuff. As I'm moving forward on those different things, I'm feeling all of these intense emotions, and I was really good about pushing them away because that's what the military trained me to do. If you feel an intense emotion and it can take control, you lose control of the situation, you lose awareness, you stop paying attention to detail. That's what I was taught. It's very far from the truth, but that's what I was taught, and that's what I lived by, and it was ingrained into me. It was indoctrinated into me. So I get to a place where I have a great job. We find a stable place to live. Life should be good, right? But these feelings of loneliness, these intense emotions still kept coming up for me. It manifested itself as me saying, I don't want to feel these anymore, so I'm going to put up this mental armor, and when they show up, I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to bury them. I'm not going to feel them. Simple, right? That's what I did. And in doing that, I pushed away the people that I worked so hard to support, to care for, to bring us to the next step. I left the military for my wife and kids because I wanted a better life for them and for myself. And I moved on to these different things. And in the process of doing that, I realized that I pushed them away so far that we were disconnected. And then when I couldn't bury the emotions any further, I picked up a video game controller instead. And boy, was that a long ride. I would play video games and it felt so inspiring and so exhilarating that I would play more and more and more. But at the same time, I was functional enough in my career that I could keep moving. Those video games became my sanctuary. Especially even more so because the nice TV with the systems and everything was set up in the bedroom. So I could easily run in there, close the door, and hide from life. Kids would be home from school on the weekend. I would still be holed up in the room with the lights off, TV on, controller in hand, or I would be at my desk playing games on the computer, or when I was around the family, I would play the games on my phone. You know, they're everywhere. I'm sure you know that in this age. If you get addicted to something like that, you can take it wherever you go and be on an IV drip of it. So it took over. My waking hours were spent playing it. My late nights were spent playing the games. I have memories going as far back as my wife being pregnant, sitting next to me while I'm playing these games. And I'm thinking, like maybe some of you are thinking, it's not hard drugs, it's not alcohol, it's not gambling, it's not any of those things, those substances that people lose control with. It's just a video game, it's harmless. But for me, it wasn't harmless, because it was easy to look at the responsibilities I had as a father, as a man, as a husband, and say, I'll take care of those things later, after I'm done with this game. And later became weeks and months and maybe even years. And then the last straw was when I just wasn't getting enough of that feeling from the game, so I would spend money on them, get the upgrades, start new games, try different things to just keep that IV drip going, that feeling, right? When I turned around, I had spent thousands of dollars in a month on upgrading stuff in these games. Sounds extreme, right? It felt normal to me until I realized that I was hiding it from my wife and making it make sense in my own head to do that. And after it was such a big mountain, I still didn't tell her, but she ended up finding out. I mean, it's a chunk of money. I was making a good amount at that time, but I still was spending a good amount as well on these video games. And when she found out, she was truly, honestly shocked, felt betrayed, and she did what she was supposed to when dealing with an addict. She told me to pack up and move out. So what I ended up doing was that night going to a hotel, sitting there on the bed, thinking about all the decisions, actions, and everything that led up to it. And that's when it hit me that I don't want the rest of my life to be this way. I can make one choice or another. The choice to continue playing the games, be separate from my wife, possibly my kids too, in some basement holed up somewhere playing for the rest of my life, or I can quit them right here and right now and take every action I can to move forward and just start on a new path, a scary path, an uncomfortable one. And I made the uncomfortable choice. I went to therapy, I started working out. I did what felt good from the military times, which was working out. So maybe 2 days later, I went down in my basement after I went back home and told my wife my plan, sold all the games, got rid of everything. I got down in that basement. I had some push-up bars, some stairs from the basement, those stairs that you walk up and down, and an old pull-up bar that my wife had bought me as a Christmas gift, I used those things to just do whatever workout program I could find. P90X, you may know it. That's where I started, and I just kept building on that. And then I started getting on here, YouTube, listening to motivational content for free. Because when I heard it, the energy would transfer. I'd just feel pumped and inspired and feel like this wasn't my lot in life and that I could make something different of myself. And then along the way of feeling that inspiration, of feeling the progress of working out, I started to feel those same emotions come back, the stress and all that. The newness of me growing was wearing off and the emotions were flowing back. But this time, I was okay with it. I was solid in the foundation of it. When love started to hit me again, and it was deep, and it was drowning, and it was intense, and I'm sitting there with my wife and kids, I'd reach out and hug them. I would speak with them. I would let that love out, let it flow. When I felt scared, when I felt fear, when I felt frustrations, I would journal. I would speak to my wife about it later on because I still had some steps to go to be that vulnerable. I would find ways to process it properly. I started getting into meditation. I started doing all these things. I'm telling you this long story, which I'll get into all those different aspects of how I got to where I'm at. That was 8+ years ago, let me remind you. And I've done a lot since then. But I realized that emotions are not something to be afraid of, to run from, to bury, to put on armor, to numb yourself of. They are simply messages that come more intense each and every time, because as you ignore it, it doesn't just go away. It gets stronger and stronger, and it comes back more intense and more intense until you need a substance or an activity to try to feel something different, to try to change your emotional state. Emotions are messages. Your emotions are messages. And one of the things that helped me to realize that was simply just journaling my thoughts every day. When I started feeling some intense fears or angers or annoyances or even love or anything, I had it in my routine to get up every morning, and part of it was to get on my phone. There was a journaling app on there that was good, or write in a notebook and just start getting all my thoughts out. And I knew when I was done journaling, because the emotion would kind of fade away. Whatever was piling up, my brain would be like, I heard exactly what you're saying, and it would let it just fade. Over time, I just started to feel good, and I started to kind of act out the same thing I did with my journaling inside of my own head. It took on a new life. That was what I guess personal growth, personal work, whatever you want to call it. That was the evolution of it, I realized from that moment on, if I just picked up different parts of my routine and I stuck with them, was consistent long enough, that they would actually be internalized. And I would gain the benefits of that activity without having to do as much, just leveraging that consistent building of the foundation that I had. I'm gonna come on here a lot more and share my story with you guys. I'm gonna share I'm gonna share a lot. I'm gonna share the messy shit. I'm gonna share the deep stuff. I'm gonna share, some day in the life type stuff. Ultimately, I'm just gonna share in the hopes that my mess becomes a message that helps you make changes that you need to make in your life, or wakes you up. Because I woke up the hard way, having to face the fact that my life would never be the same again. One way or another, I was gonna have to make some changes. And I want you to get there on your own, without life, which will put you on that path, without life intensely hitting you with those decisions you gotta make, Maybe you can realize it before it gets to that point, before it gets that intense. So if you relate to this on any level, if you know somebody that might relate to it, I would really appreciate you share the story with them and subscribe to catch what I put on here. I'm gonna set a goal to just make a good video once every week, typical YouTube fashion, and see what you guys take from these messages as we go. But I promise that whenever I put a video out on here, it's just gonna be authentic shit, deeply from the heart. But I'll talk about why I do things from the heart next time.